Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among many other things. Now we're taking a look here today at EGLD, which is Elrond, and this is an interesting one because it's actually got some really good fundamentals. I recommend you check that out in your own time. This is just a technical analysis, though. We don't really do that here. Not to say it's not important, it very much is, but we're just going to look at the technical charts here to make sure you understand, best practice and how to read the charts more effectively. I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. You should, again, do your own research and just know I have years of trading experience, and my goal is to help you make more informed decisions, but also to become a better, effective trader, right? That's the whole premise here, is to ensure that you learn a little something. So you stick around, I promise you will. And if you're interested in kind of more autopilot, I do share all of my signals, all of my trades with my community members through my Patreon account. Check that out. I actually have a signal group where I send out signals as soon as I take entry and once I take exit, etc. It's all included within that. And I have about a 75% success rate. It hovers between 75 and 80, but I would say that's the lower side. Regardless, hope you find benefit there if you reference that. Now is the best time to register, of course, because it's closer to the beginning of the month. The way in which Patreon bills is it's more effective to start earlier in the month. So check that out in your own time, of course, and we'll look forward to the analysis. Let's go ahead and check it out. Let's get to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at Elrond. And before we do, of course, we always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first to get a baseline on the market so we know exactly what's going on. That way we can kind of understand big picture and make an informed decision, right? Because you got to know all of your angles if you're going to be a good trader. And that is the key here to essentially teach you a thing or two to make sure you know kind of what to look for. And just to clarify, I use TradingView desktop application. You can use it on your phone, of course, too, but generally speaking, I use the paid version. There's a link in the description below for a free month, of course, for the referral link, but I would recommend that just based on the simple fact that you can utilize more than just 2 indicators at a time, and it makes much more sense because even though I only like 2 indicators per chart, per time frame rather, I still cycle through a lot of different indicators. And I'll explain that here today, of course, if you're new to the channel. But more importantly, the main thing that I utilize is the simple moving averages on the 4-hour chart. And we're just going to be using that on Bitcoin at this point, just to get a quick perspective of what's going on. So this purple line here is the 200. Price is above the 200, and the 50, of course, just met the price action here and is currently above potentially a resistance right now. Okay, so that's a potential resistance there for the 50. Now it's common for the 50 to be tested a few times and then rejected or hold below. It's still a little premature, but that is essentially the case right now. Moving forward, also we've got 40 to 42,500 as a channel, which is essentially the upper channel, more of a bullish channel, where the price was up over 40,000, and then below is essentially there's a range of 37 to 40,000. So I have this for my signal group, of course, just to kind of paint the picture, make it a little bit more understandable, but we shouldn't expect to see the price come anywhere below 37,000. That proved to be a strong support level previously, and 40,000 has been tested multiple times as a resistance and a support. So it literally could go either way if and when it's tested again soon. It should test soon. That is the speculation, because we have had 2 bullish Harami candles. In fact, well, we got one here. This one is forming as one, but it hasn't closed quite yet. Could be a doji, which it would also indicate a potential reversal. So we definitely got some good things there. The very last thing also I'm excited about is the fact that, not the cloud, sorry, we're looking at TD sequential. And you can see a 9 here for TD sequential, basically stating that we have reached a state of exhaustion at this point in time, so we shouldn't expect to see much more bearish momentum. It should reverse soon, likely break 40,000, and then on its way back to test 42,500 rather. Okay, that's kind of the goal there essentially, but that's kind of what we're looking at. I actually have an open position right now as a long position because I do feel as if the price will increase and get upwards of 42,500 again in the next couple of days. All right, so moving on to Ethereum, we'll go ahead and take a look here. Ethereum's doing really well. There's some fundamentals you want to do some research on, but they definitely had some important stuff just drop. So this is why we see this sharp increase when Bitcoin's going sideways and or declining a little bit. We see Ethereum increasing. Now this is pretty standard. I mean, take a look at this here. This feels very similar. Look at that ramp up and look at this ramp up now. I know it's pretty small, short, premature, a lot of things here, of course. And I'm not saying it isn't, it's going to just explode, but I can tell you that Ethereum is doing much better than it typically does when Bitcoin does poorly. Or just say Bitcoin goes sideways. Ethereum's been going sideways and down, whereas right now, all we're seeing is sideways action. So I would recommend considering a long position also on Ethereum. I'm speculating taking a position myself soon. So this might be my next target, just because, again, there's really good fundamentals that just dropped. So if Bitcoin jumps up over 40,000, starts trading towards 42.5, I think Ethereum will start trending also towards 2,900, which is a major resistance previously. Current support is 1725, and as well, we have a secondary support at about 2,400. All right, so that's Ethereum right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at EGLD. And just to clarify too, we're going to look at the one-day chart first to kind of get perspective on its average true range, and then we'll move on to a shorter time frames, kind of identify potential entry points. But what I always like to look at is just how receptive this is to Bitcoin and Bitcoin sell-off, right? Because if Bitcoin sells off, how does EGLD respond to it? So as you can kind of see here, it's easy to find. You see this long red candle, really long wick, but it's still closed, fairly close, not bad. This was the first major sell-off from Bitcoin. So obviously its range in that day was pretty significant. It went down approximately 40%, but it recovered upwards of, just say only a 15% loss on the day. And then it continued on downwards. That's normal. And then April 25th, essentially, things ramped back up for Bitcoin, and most other altcoins did too. So this is following the same pattern. And we can obviously see the 18th here, 18th/19th for the China candle. That essentially sent everything downwards from there. So, everything's pretty much business from usual. The only thing that's contradictory there is, of course, and again, this could be a fundamental catalyst, is today. The last 24 hours, we've seen a significant increase. This is pretty huge, all things considered. It doesn't look like much, but that's almost 25%. Probably just say round down to 20% increase here in the last 24 hours. So that's pretty big, considering Bitcoin's kind of gone mostly sideways here. Obviously, it ramped back up here, but it's doing very well right now. So just keep that in mind. RSI is up over 70 now, so just keep that also in mind, because when the RSI goes over 70, it doesn't mean you want to sell or trim your position. It's just an indication to pay closer attention to see what happens next, because it could very well just keep continuing upwards, right? And with any good bull run, you like to see a staircase pattern come up and over, up and over. We want to see this come over and then kind of creep its way up, right? We don't like to see that and then this and then this, because then it leads to one of these, right? There's a lot of retracement that occurs the stronger something increases, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. That's essentially what we're looking at for EGLD. Okay, let's take a quick look at the MACD. Just double check here. We had a convergence on the 24th. Big surprise. That is essentially when the actual, couple days after we saw the price come from 29,000 to 33,000 for Bitcoin. So it's roughly about that time frame. Let's go ahead and take a look too here at the 4-hour chart, and this is actually looking pretty good as well. RSI is up over 70. There's a chance it could just keep going sideways. I like this candlestick here as well. Basically just showing that even though it's it is essentially a hammer, it's not bearish by any means there. So that's a very good sign. That means it came up and down and then back up again in this full time frame. So what that basically just tells us is that we should see some more sideways action and a potential for a ramp up after that. Okay. Again, it's a little too early to say, but on the 4-hour chart, we can get that to close like that, which is coming up on this candlestick closing, then we're going to be in pretty good shape for a continuation of that bull run. It may not ramp up right now, because again, every good bull run needs a little bit of sideways action. We want at least 3 or 4 of these more, 3 or 4 more of these bars that go sideways, and then of course an increase after that. Taking a look here, let's go ahead and quickly note, and this is an interesting one here. Usually that convergence there, it's interesting. Let's see what's the time frame there. Okay, right here. Let's go ahead and mark that. I like to look at this here because oftentimes when you mark the convergence on the 4-hour chart, you can go ahead and find some pretty quick and interesting correlations with the Ishimoku cloud. So we'll take a look at that here in a second, but that's kind of what we're looking at here for EGLD so far. I mean, we're looking pretty good all in all. RSI is up over 70, yes, but it's not like it didn't blast through. We had a nice convergence here recently, and that was on the 1st at 2100. So let's take a look on the 1-hour chart. Let's go ahead and see what the cloud tells us here. And big surprise, take a look at this here. Again, it's been over the cloud for some time, but it dipped in below. So here's the quick little understanding of how the cloud works. First of all, this is the Ishimoku cloud. You just search for Ishimoku in the indicators here, right? And you just double click on cloud. It's going to have a lot of information there, but you just disable some of those other indicators. So all the spans you remove, and then you just simply have the plots background enabled. And it gives you this cloud here. And what this cloud does is it tells you anytime the price is below, it's considered a sell signal. And the price is above, it's considered a buy signal. Now, this is a cool thing about this. If you look here, that would have been a good buy signal. Of course, it's a little premature, but still nothing wrong with that. And you would have held on for a little bit longer, came up, down, and then came back up again. So it's a good sign. But you see here where the price actually came down and got into the cloud. Normally it's a no buy zone when you're in the cloud, right? But when it breaks above, like it did right here, then it's considered a buy signal. But what's interesting, and I marked this here, that's what this other yellow indication is, that's the convergence on the MACD. And that basically tells us that the price is swinging in an upward fashion there. And we got the 12 and the 26 intersecting upwards, which basically just tells us that convergence is indicating a buy signal for a long-term hold, or more so a swing trader, right? But if you look at the 1 hour chart and confirm that no less than 1 hour later, the price broke above the cloud, that's second confirmation. That's ideal confirmation. So if you have some indicators set up, that's what you want to try to look for. And that would be a case in point where, anywhere in this 4 hour time frame would have been a good buy. Okay. And obviously we noticed here as well, it ramped up a good, 20% in that short amount of time. So all in all, good stuff here. Just something to note. Let's go and see if we've reached any type of exhaustion here. And yes, we definitely have. So just keep this in mind here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're in extreme overtime right now. So just keep that in mind. That's another thing to note, is the fact that when we have a continuation past the 9, in other words, we have more than 9 hours of bullish momentum, then there's likelihood of a retracement. Now, with it going sideways here right now, that will be the retracement that it needs to reset. That's why any good bull run doesn't need to just go straight up the entire time, because it'll retrace about 50%. We may not see a 50% retracement here. We should see some sideways action that continues. This 9 will reset essentially, and we'll start getting 1s, 2s, and 3s, and that would essentially just start the process over again. But as you can tell, we've got like seven or eight extra hours of overtime, if you will, for a TD sequential, where we're essentially considered extremely overbought. So that tells me there's probably some kind of strong fundamental catalyst causing the price action to increase. And here it is again. It's trying to ramp back up and keep going up. So hopefully it just keeps going sideways and we see it go from there. So let's see. That's kind of what we're looking at for EGLD. Let's go ahead and move on to the 15 and just kind of note a couple of things here, because the 15-minute chart really is the ultimate indication of an entry point, right? So you use this time frame to identify a good entry, and in which I always utilize the EMA and the VWAP lines here. So the VWAP is a blue line. That's the volume weighted average price expressed as correction. Let me rewind. That is the volume weighted average price. It takes the volume of the last 24 hours and expresses it as a price. So right now, at this point in time, the price should be $96, whereas it's upwards of 102. That variance is approximately, let's go ahead and see here. We have a variance of about 7%, so it's not terrible. We shouldn't expect to see crashing back down. If you have a variance over, to say, 10 to 15%, then that's a tendency of where we start seeing the price reversing fast and quick. Another reason why we don't like to see the price increase too fast, because that retracement that occurs. So we can avoid retracement. We can see some sideways action, some consolidation, if we don't have this happen, right? So small variance equals a good thing. Furthermore, the price is over the EMA, the red line there. That's basically the exponential moving average, telling us that the bulls are in complete control. As you can see, every time it comes over to try to come down, it keeps getting tested and rejected, keeping the price above. Okay, so that's still maintaining right now. So all in all, generally speaking, I don't normally recommend taking entry when the price is elevated at this point. But if you put a decent, a realistic stop loss, maybe somewhere in the range of half the, what I would say about 98, put your stop loss somewhere in the range of about 98. And that would put you in a position to be able to take some gains, likely when it pumps up again. But again, normally I don't recommend taking entry this late in the stage here, especially with it being overextended. But as long as it doesn't retrace past, down past about the 50% mark, then we're going to be in pretty good shape there. And usually when you get, you put up the Fibonacci retracement tool, you'll see those things happen. So let's go from the lowest point to the highest point. And you'll see a lot of times, like generally speaking, the Fibonacci retracement tool tells us that we should probably put a support right around this range, about $100. I prefer 98 in this case, because of the simple fact that a lot of times it can test and reject at that level, because that's what all the industry leaders are utilizing. Whereas if you just go a little bit below or above, those are good support resistance levels. That's just my personal opinion. It works out favorably for me. So I would just, again, say 98. I always split the difference, whatever the largest time frame is, the largest candlestick, cut that in half, and that's usually where it's going to retrace down to. And you can see it already test back there anyway, so that's kind of the case. Either way you look at it here, I do recommend just, again, tight stop if you're going to take entry at this point, because it is, again, overextended. There's no doubt about it. But again, the RSI is calming down. We are starting to see it, go sideways for some time. If we can get just say 2 to 6 more hours of sideways action, it'll likely ramp up and take off again. just based on the fact that it's calmed down and had enough time to consolidate. Right, this is very important. But regardless, I do hope you find benefit here. Oh, you know what? Let's do this before we part ways here. Let's take a quick look. I forgot to identify its average true range, and obviously what we want to look for in regard to average true range is a time frame in which before the sell-offs occurred, right? Because right in this time here, Bitcoin was between 40 to 60,000. It started tapering off and coming back down, of course, but before then, the average price was anywhere from 118 to 240, and that's a big range. But if you split the difference, 120 to 240, you're looking at about 180. I would say is like right in the middle. So 180 would be likely the destination for EGLD if Bitcoin can surpass 42,500 and start trending towards 50,000. If we can get Bitcoin back into 50,000 range, then EGLD will take off and continue on to test its previous average true range of 180. All right, so that's my forecast here. I'd say in the next month, EGLD has a propensity for hitting 180. It has that possibility, except for the fact that it's fairly reliant on Bitcoin. We've identified that already. Now, even though this is a pretty strong fundamental catalyst causing the price action to increase today, unless that continues, we're going to have to rely on Bitcoin doing better to see EGLD take off. All right, and you can pretty much have that same sentiment for most altcoins right now. It's generally the consensus. But again, if you found benefit from this, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining me here. Please consider joining my Telegram community. There's a really good group of folks there. You can learn a lot. There's no cost. If you'd like to contribute or learn a lot more and essentially be part of my Signal group, I do have a Patreon account as well that helps you. And that basically, I just share my signals with you. I share all of my trades. I trend at about 75% average right now, presently, for my success rate overall. So I think that's fairly good considering the average consumer is probably somewhere in the low 30% range for success, unless you're just very lucky. Either way, I utilize everything that I have here in my signals. So hopefully you can continue to learn as much as you can and we can all grow together. So thank you very much for your time. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.